You're probably losing half your potential harvest before your seeds even sprout. Almost everyone follows the same planting advice, but that advice wastes valuable space. After studying highly productive small space growing systems, I noticed they all shared one overlooked principle. Some gardeners harvest basket after basket from beds smaller than a parking space, while others barely fill a bowl. So what's the difference? It's not luck, climate, or expensive equipment. Today I'll break down exactly what happened when I fed my soil with Japan's Bokashi method for 30 days straight, and show you how to apply it in your own tiny garden. Everything I'm using in this experiment, the exact system, the layout, the space math, is laid out in my small space garden blueprint. It's linked at the top of my channel in the description and pinned in the comments if you want to follow along and build this in your own space. And don't miss the final tip, because it's often the single biggest yield multiplier of them all. Stick around, everything I post here is tested, not guessed. Subscribe if that's the kind of garden help you're after. In Japan, there's a guiding principle called motenai. It roughly translates to don't waste what still has value, a deep respect for resources, even the ones we're quick to throw away. Now, I'm not here to preach philosophy, but here's why this matters for your garden. When you toss food scraps in the trash or dump synthetic fertilizer on your beds, you're overriding a system that's been recycling nutrients for millions of years and killing off the microbial life your plants actually depend on. The Japanese figured this out through generations of farming in incredibly tight spaces, and what modern soil science is now confirming is that fermented organic matter introduces microbial diversity far faster than traditional composting. Some studies show usable nutrients in weeks instead of months. Here's how it works at a biological level. Beneficial bacteria and yeast ferment the scraps anaerobically, breaking them down into a pre-digested form. Once it hits the soil, that fermented matter feeds microorganisms almost immediately, which means your roots get nutrients while they're still actively growing, not months later. That's Japanese thinking applied to gardening. They're not using any technology you and I don't have access to. They're just choosing to feed the soil ecosystem instead of feeding the plant directly. That shift in thinking changed everything for me. And it didn't require buying a single expensive product. Just a bucket, some scraps, and 30 days of patience. Here's step 2. And this is where the Bokashi approach really starts to look different from traditional composting. Most of us toss scraps into an open bin and let oxygen and time slowly break them down. But here's what we're actually doing, inviting mold, pests, and odor while nutrients leach away before they ever reach our soil. Bokashi handles it differently by fermenting in a sealed, airtight environment instead. 1. Layer your food scraps about 2 inches deep in the Bokashi bucket, no piece thicker than a fist-sized chunk. 2. Sprinkle a thin layer of Bokashi bran over every layer, done immediately after adding scraps, not hours later. 3. Press the layer down firmly, making sure to leave no air gaps, since any trapped oxygen invites rot instead of fermentation. Now here's where most people go wrong. They leave the lid loosely closed or skip pressing the scraps down. If you let air pockets form, you end up with a smelly, moldy mess instead of clean fermentation. Instead, press hard after every layer and make sure that seal clicks fully shut. You'll know this is working when the smell shifts from kitchen trash to a sharp, pickled tang, almost like sauerkraut. If it smells rotten, something went wrong with your seal. To recap, 2-inch scrap layers, a thin dusting of bran after each one, pressed flat with 0 air gaps, sealed tight every single time. This is actually one of the exact systems I break down step by step, including bucket placement, timing, and how to fit this into a tiny kitchen inside the small space garden blueprint. If you want the shortcut instead of trial and error, grab it here. Once that fermentation stage is locked in, you move to step 3, where we bury this pre-digested matter directly into your growing bed. Let me share some patterns I've noticed over the years, things I used to do the conventional way that the Japanese approach handles completely differently. No judgment here. I did all of these for longer than I'd like to admit. The first pattern is throwing food scraps straight into the trash or an open compost pile without a second thought. Most of us toss peels, cores, and leftovers into a bin, which looks harmless, just a normal part of cleaning the kitchen. But those nutrients end up in a landfill or slowly leaching away in an open pile, mostly lost before they ever reach a garden bed. The problem is you're throwing away a resource your soil desperately needs, one scrap at a time, without realizing it. The Japanese Bokashi approach ferments those same scraps in a sealed bucket because they understood that nutrients preserved through fermentation outperform nutrients lost to slow decay. What that means practically is every scrap becomes usable soil food in weeks, not months, nothing wasted, nothing thrown away. The second pattern is watering on a fixed schedule instead of checking the soil first. Most of us water every morning like clockwork, which looks responsible on the surface, but it often means overwatering when it rains and underwatering during a heat wave. The problem is you're watering the calendar, not the plant, ignoring the actual signal the soil is giving you. Traditional Japanese growers check soil moisture by hand before ever picking up a hose, because they know the system tells you what it needs before you assume anything. What that means practically is stronger root systems, fewer fungal issues, and water actually going where it's needed instead of where habit says to put it. The third pattern is keeping the garden bed too clean, bare soil, no mulch, nothing left behind. Most of us clear every leaf and stem after harvest, which looks tidy and organized, but it leaves soil exposed to sun, wind, and erosion. The problem is you're stripping away the natural insulation and food source that soil microbes rely on to stay active. The Bokashi-influenced approach returns fermented matter and organic debris directly to the bed, because bare soil is treated as a problem to fix, not a sign of good gardening. What that means practically is better moisture retention, fewer weeds competing for space, and a soil ecosystem that keeps feeding itself between plantings. None of these conventional approaches will ruin your garden. They're just leaving production on the table, and in a small space, that's production you genuinely can't afford to lose. Before I learned this, my soil stayed depleted no matter how much store-bought compost I dumped in, and half my scraps just went straight into the trash instead of back into my garden. Now my Bokashi-treated bed is producing noticeably larger, more vigorous plants than my control bed, with root systems that established almost twice as fast. Here's the progression. Week 1-2. The fermented scraps buried into the soil started breaking down, and I saw earthworms concentrated right around the burial site within days. Week 3. Seedlings in the Bokashi bed were visibly darker green and reaching for the surface faster than the control bed. Week 4. The Bokashi bed's plants were nearly double the height, with noticeably thicker stems and denser leaf coverage. Day 30, final check. Soil in the Bokashi bed had transformed completely, dark, crumbly, and alive, compared to the still dry, compacted control bed. 1 4-square-foot bed treated with Bokashi-enriched soil outproduced its untreated twin by a noticeable margin in root development and plant vigor alone. And that's before a single vegetable was harvested. Scale that across 4 beds in a small backyard, and you're looking at significantly faster establishment across your entire growing space. My best result this month was a bed that looked like it had 2 extra weeks of growth packed into 30 days. Japanese gardeners who have used Bokashi for years report even more dramatic soil transformation. The difference is consistency. This isn't a one-time fix, it's a system you repeat every month. Realistic first-month expectation is exactly what I got. Visibly healthier soil and faster establishing plants, not overnight miracles. Keep the cycle going every month, and those results compound. I'd rather you start with honest expectations and be pleasantly surprised than oversell you on day 1. If this helped even a little, subscribing helps more than you'd think, and it means you won't miss the next one. Put together a complete step-by-step plan that covers exactly how to maximize every inch of a small garden bed layout, spacing, soil building systems like the one you just watched, and succession planting so you're never wasting space. It's called the Small Space Garden Blueprint, and here's how to get it. Click the link right down here in the description. Tap the link at the top of my channel profile, or check the pinned comment below this video. It's right there too. If this helped even a little, subscribing helps more than you'd think, and it means you won't miss the next one. Now here's what I want to know from you. In the comments below, tell me if you've tried composting before and what happened, or what your biggest soil struggle has been. I read every single comment. If this changed how you think about your garden, please share it with someone who's been wanting to start growing but feels overwhelmed by how little space they have. Thanks for spending time with me. I'll see you in the next one.